What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new 361 degrees Big3 5.0 Quick Pro. That is a mouthful, and these things were just an absolute blast to play test. So let's get into them. And huge thanks, 361 degrees, for sending me a pair of these to check out. However, this video is by no means sponsored, zero editorial control on their part. And as always, all opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, are all my own. Now, there were so many things about these shoes that I absolutely loved, but I do want to start out with the one thing that I was not so in love with, and that is the tongue on these things. Now, number one, it is nice and padded up in the more proximal tongue, right, as it kind of goes up your leg, and it is a long tongue, right, so it does cover a lot of your anterior ankle, which is phenomenal. But the same thing like the Big3 Future, you know, right where the laces cross your ankle and can give you a little bit more irritation, that's where the padding kind of drops off to me a little bit. That's where you can get a little bit of the irritation on these. A quick little piece of moleskin or anything under the tongue does fix that. But for the rest of the shoe being so unbelievably comfortable, that was the one thing that just kind of, like I said, it was the same thing on Jokic's shoe, right? That was just the one thing that just, you know, that's the part that didn't match the others in terms of comfort. Now, the other thing I noticed is on the lace line, now, number one, this is TPU backed all the way through the lace line, so it is very, very strong. The laces are very hard to tie down at first. It is really hard to kind of get your fingers in there and tie this shoe down. The laces are also incredibly long. So that does break in after a little bit of time, but just get ready for a little bit of difficulty tying these things down and dialing in that lockdown until they break in. But moving proximal from the tongue, if you look at the ankle collar and heel counter on these things, really well padded. There's a ton of thick bunting and padding. Your heel sits very nicely in there. Super comfortable around the heel, and the lockdown is fantastic. Mild heel slippage at first, and once these things break in, really mild to none, to be honest. I really felt nice and secure in these, for these being, you know, a more low-cut shoe. Now, as you move more distal from the tongue and kind of underneath the tongue, the gusset is very aggressive. It is this netted gusset, right? It has this mesh underneath of it. And then that does continue out into the uppers, where there is a lot of communication from the periphery of the uppers to the inside of the shoe. So if you look at the breathability mapping of these things, there was fog getting out of a lot of different places in this shoe. It was kind of finding its way after a few seconds. One thing I did notice both on foot as well as with the breathability test is that these things still did heat up 116.2 degrees. And for a shoe with this much ventilation in it, that is a little bit higher than we're used to seeing with shoes with, like I said, this much egress out of the shoe. I noticed when I was out on about a 92, 93 degree Fahrenheit day, and honestly, I didn't really feel bad at all. It was afterwards that I could kind of feel my foot heating up in these a little bit of the moisture in there. And on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, there is a drag guard on here. The burr does get through that, but it does not get in to the woven TPU layer underneath of that. So there is a lot of outsole rubber that comes up over the uppers too. So, you know, you have to really be an extreme everter to get these things looking weird. So honestly, for a drag or a slider, even on outdoor courts, I think they should be just fine. And then if you go around that drag guard to the lateral side, that does meet up with that TPU stabilizer that goes all the way from the tip of the toes all the way around the shoe back into the lateral heel. So there is a lot of containment laterally on these. And like I said before, for a shoe with this much of a low cut feel and this, you know, much freedom in the shoe, as we'll talk about in the playability section, honestly, the containment on these, very, very outsized for the profile of the shoe. It's just putting the right materials in the right places can go a long way. And getting into the midsole teardown, actually while I was doing this, part of the carbon fiber actually impaled me in my elbow, which I thought was pretty funny. Carbon fiber is very, very small, so it doesn't hurt unless you get like a splinter of it in your hands, and then it can get really annoying, but in this case, pull it out. But I thought it was kind of funny that there was so much carbon fiber in here that it was just kind of flying everywhere. One thing I noticed is that carbon fiber shank, it's in an X-plate configuration, but then it's closed off at the two caps. Now the thing about that is, I mean, that's nice, but it does cross two zones, right? It crosses from the rear foot into the midfoot and then the midfoot into the forefoot. So it's a very long bottom-loaded carbon fiber shank, and it is double thickness for carbon fiber, which, you know, honestly, for a shoe that has this much carbon fiber in it and it's that long, it's not uncomfortable whatsoever, because then over top of that, you have that compartmentalized thermoplastic CO2 injected foam. That's another mouthful. But if you look at it under the microscope, it looks like boost foam, right? But it's thermoplastics, and those compartments have the CO2 injected in there. That's what makes it feel so buoyant. That's what makes it feel so good underfoot. These things, honestly, in the midsole, very much remind me of the AG4, which I talked about. I you know, gush over all the time with how protective it feels underfoot. As you look at the bounce height test on these things, got 40 centimeters in the heel, 42 in the forefoot. So definitely still has some bounce to it, but It's that shock absorptive capability of it too. It's when you're coming back down from those jumps and you're not feeling that shock up your leg is where I think the real magic of that foam happens. Now on the same day, I was testing out the On Roger Clubhouse Pro. This is a tennis and pickleball model, but these ones had, you know, the board shank in the back of it and then just the standard, you know, EVA foam. And I noticed immediately with my jumper's knee, the difference in having these on versus having something like this on. It was just night and day. And since I was on outdoor courts that day, it was really apparent kind of going head to head how good these things are, how protective they are. And honestly, the only other one that I think comes close to this type of protective capability is the AG4. And getting into the outsole tread, this is one of my favorites to look at on the viewing box to date. I'll get to that in a second. But if you look at it on the medial side, it is these hexagonal patterns that are made of broken up triangles, and those kind of flower out from there. And on the lateral side, it's basically just a bunch of multi-directional triangles going up and down the shoe, kind of in a wave pattern. But if you look at it on the viewing box, it's so crazy. All those triangles, when you're pushing down on them, they're all compressing and expanding kind of together, but also there's this individual rubber movement of each triangle, which I just found absolutely fascinating. And you know, that visual really does translate onto court. These things were so sure-footed, but also very, very nimble. I mean, these are a full-length tread pattern. The tread depth isn't too deep. No, they didn't feel super tacky. You know, they slipped at 39 degrees on the grip test ramp, which is, you know, it's pretty higher end in terms of grippy, but it's not into that 45, 46, 47 degree range, those super tack shoes. But I noticed that the consistency of grip on these from indoor courts to outdoor courts was just out of this world. It was so just nail on consistent. And it's funny because I just did a top 5 pickleball video of indoor and outdoor shoes. I'm gonna have to go reshoot parts of it now because these ones, like I said, just so consistent, so good, so sure-footed, both on outdoor asphalt, cement, and concrete, as well as indoor hardwood. I just noticed there was just no difference, right, in between them. So if you're looking for a very nimble but sure-footed shoe, yeah, these were definitely some of my personal favorites to date. And putting that all together on the speed ratio, these things came in at a 3.12, a shank score of 0.4 brings those up to a 3.52, and I think, yeah, that's right where they belong. Like I said, it really doesn't matter what court surface you're on, whether it's a little bit more forgiving court or a really, really dead-end court, these things have some pop to them. And they're so light, right? You know, relative to what they give you underneath of your foot, they feel so bottom light and they just feel light in your hands. These things do a lot that some much bulkier shoes do. For the, you know, light nature of this shoe, for it to feel this stable in terms of cutting power side to side, but also that snap that you can get going north to south, right, going coast to coast. Yeah, I mean, no wonder these things are definitely one of the faster shoes on the market right now. Looking at it on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. Yeah, I mean, not even a millimeter of damage on these. The durometer came in at 17.5. So really indoor or outdoor, these things really are fine. I think that their protective nature, like I said, in the midsole makes me like them more for outdoor courts versus indoor courts. But they're honestly, it's a toss-up, right? Like, do you like playing outside more? Do you like playing inside more? You know, it's really just a toss-up. But getting into the fit of the Quick Pro, these things do have a 13-degree inflare, so these are pretty inflared. However, the length is pretty true, 28.7 centimeters for my men's size 11, and then the width is 9.6 centimeters. So these are very forgiving shoes. I will say, I think for a narrow and medium foot, if you're not super high arched, I think you can go down a half size as long as you don't have a prominent styloid process, right? As long as you have a really bulky lateral or outside of your foot, you can get a little bit more weight reduction that way, as well as a little bit more lockdown, which is always nice. If you're a 2, I think just go true to size on these. And if you're a medium foot and just want a roomy fit shoe, then yeah, by all means, especially if you want to put an orthotic in these things accept orthotics very nicely because, like I said, they do have a little more bulk in there, so you can lock down over an orthotic pretty well. So it kind of depends. Are you using orthotics or are you not? That can also kind of determine if you're going down a half size or staying true to size. A 4E, as long as you're not a super outflared foot or a really prominent styloid or lateral foot, I think, you know, you'd be okay true to size or going up that 1/2 size. Now, in terms of the snake bit and foot or just other foot types, they are okay for flat, neutral, and high arched feet, but the higher arched your foot is, the more annoying the tongue's gonna be. So if you are a high arched foot, I would just maybe invest in some adhesive moleskin under the tongue, and that should really take care of you there. Otherwise, you should be just fine. Now, in terms of, you know, any lumps, bumps, bruises, in terms of heel pain, ball of foot pain, arch pain, tendonitis, shin splints, they're fine. I mean, they're some of the best on the market. You know, like I talked about the protective nature of them. that extends into a lot of, ailments in your foot. Now, if you are someone that is an ankle sprainer, for a shoe this light and unencumbering, kind of, low profile in nature, they're fantastic. Obviously that in-flare of them, you're gonna have to give some consideration to, but for the profile of this shoe, like I said, it has pretty much all the protective capabilities of the AG4, it's just lighter. And getting into the all-important playability of the Quick Pro, I mean, these things, like I said, they give you the confidence of the AG4 to keep going up and down, up and down, up and down, rebound after rebound, jump after jump. But they also have a little bit more degrees of freedom, right? They allow a little bit more movement, a little more nimble play out of them, a little more durable for outdoor courts. So I'd say, like I said, if you want a lightweight shoe that has all the trappings of a more maximalist protective shoe on court, they can also allow a lot of very nimble movement. I mean, these are it. These are one of the better playing shoes out there for most positions, right? It really doesn't matter what position you play in these things. And I know when I was reading their little marketing thing, when I was looking at what the shape of that shank was, when I was cutting through it to kind of see, exactly where it was, connected, I noticed they said it was, for all 5 positions. But honestly, it does bear out in the real world. I mean, I know with me, when I was one of my lessons on these, I did notice that when my coach was trying to get me to get up on the balls of my foot more, when I was kind of going, between the legs, hesitation, then between the legs, she was always saying, like, you kind of look like you're kind of doing like a dance like this because I'm on my heels so much. And I was trying to stay up on the balls of my foot on this. And I just noticed, I had another couple other shoes that day. I noticed on these things how sure-footed they were when I was getting up on the balls of my foot. I was still, smacking the ball against my calf and my thigh and everything. But the footwork was so easy in these, and it was so easy to feel confident underneath that I wasn't gonna roll these things, and that I could still pop up from those. Because after those hesitations, you were kind of trying to, hop step past the defender to the left, and these things that stop, and then all of a sudden you just had this super easy just push off on these. And I noticed that, and then when I was on outdoor courts kind of doing the same thing, just kind of hopping around, these things just bounce off the ground so easily, but then when you come back down, they feel just so easy on your legs. So honestly, the all-around kind of everything shoe, and I think, to me, my personal favorite shoe, if I need one shoe for indoor and outdoor basketball, as well as indoor and outdoor pickleball, and then tennis in a pinch, this would be like the one shoe I'd have in my bag if you want one for everything. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, on these in the comments down below. Especially since the last couple weeks, we've had so many good shoes come across my desk on this channel. So it's nice to see. It's always nice to be able to have a fun performance review on these shoes. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on these in the comments down below. And if you do want to see what I'm talking about with the AG4 and kind of all the trappings that those things have, and why those were such a favorite of mine for so many ailments and snake bites on your feet, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.